It's Athens. 500 BC, Athens has just invented democracy, self-government, freedom. What does that mean to a family? If you're a kid, do you have cooler stuff? And if you're parents, do you have a better life? Let's follow a family in Athens throughout their day, and let's see what life is really like when Athens is becoming the best. People get so worked up about Athens is the best. Well, let's go see. I'm Mr. Hull. This is Ancient History. The Acropolis is that tall hill that we see in Athens where the Parthenon is on top. You know, the Parthenon is a smaller version in 500 BC that's not the big one yet, but it sticks up and everybody can see it. And there are a bunch of villages at the base of it. Why do we know that? Not long ago, when the Acropolis Museum was being built, they had to dig down deep for the footers, for the foundation. And while they were digging and trying to lay these huge, massive, strong foundation pillars to hold up the entire building, they were hitting people's homes. They were hitting into the latrines and the fountains and the village life of ancient Athens that spanned hundreds of different years across many centuries. And they just in 2024 opened up this exhibit so that you could actually see these villages. The Acropolis Museum is really phenomenal because it tries to reconstruct and show all the treasures from the Acropolis, especially the Parthenon. But this is really an exciting view underneath to see what an Athenian family, a village would be like. It's really quite exciting, and it's going to give us a lot of insight into Athenian life in 500 BC. So this is lesson 31 in your ancient history course, and we are stepping into the daily life of ancient Athens to ask the big questions and discover how it shapes history, and that includes how it shapes your journey. So in this lesson, we're going to discover the powerful truths of how their life is like your life. Let's compare it to your life and how the Athenians were living. Let's also see the role of participation. Civic duty now means that dad needs to participate in the assembly. What else does it mean? Join the debate and participate. And then the good life with celebrations, because there's festivals, there's symposium that you can host and enjoy everything that Athens has to offer. So our journey begins here at the fountains where the family that we are following today will find out more about how these kids and these parents conduct their day. You know, dad's in charge of the Oikos. This is the household. This is the household unit. And it really has identity for everybody. You know, once you're born, it takes them 6 days before they have a religious ceremony to accept the child as healthy and legitimate and all of that. And the Oikos is run by the father. The dog gets to be included in the Oikos, a real family member if you have pets. If your family's wealthy enough, you've got enslaved workers that are a part of this. And there are specific roles that we're going to find out about the Oikos. How does your day start out in the morning? Do you have breakfast? Does mom cook it? And what is in it? We're going to see some wheat grains or barley grains. In fact, in classical kingdoms, you're going to hear barley a lot. Check your cabinets. Do you have any barley? If you don't, get some and find your favorite way to cook it so that you know. Now, you may not have these fresh figs. You may not have this delicious Greek honey. Every time I go to Greece, I load up on Greek honey. It was a big deal. It has a different flavor and consistency because there's different plants for those bees, and it's a big part of the diet. Notice back when the family was gathering water, there are some big clay pots, and then there's also some of those small bronze water bottles. hey, do you have a water bottle? Do you carry it around like these kids? Because they used to. And there are so many different sizes and shapes of containers. They did not have Amazon boxes or, plastic bags or anything like that. Everything's a clay pot. So if you don't know the word amphora, those are the big ones, and that's used for storage and carrying around some of the big loads of water, olive oil, whatever it may be. And what's painted on the amphora, or all the different shapes of pottery, is really a very big deal. You don't have screen time in ancient Athens, 500 BC. How do you get some of the visual information? Look at pottery, for one. Action scenes, stories, Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, you're going to see that. And from the previous lesson, that is a picture of Pisistratus and his bodyguards. Remember how Pisistratus was a tyrant? He took over power using an unconventional method where he used these bodyguards and faked his injuries and had Athena riding with him. And so that story gets told over and over again because he was still a popular figure, right? And they love games too. So why not have a chariot race? This is before the chariot race starts. So there's some anticipation, some suspense. So this is Dad's pottery shop, and it might be a place where people come to buy a very popular, fun item that we'll need later in the day. Later in the day, you need one of these shapes. Well, you need them all. One of the shapes is for mixing the wine, because the wine is kind of like a concentrate being stored in one of the big amphoras, and then you got to take it out, mix it down with water, and then another one is where you serve it into and you drink out of. Do you know which is which? Which one do you drink out of? And does it have any cool designs on it? The kylix is the one that we need later today for when there's a celebration so that some of the adults could drink some wine. And this is actually an exciting scene of Heracles fighting the Nemean lion. So the stories that are told visually on the pottery, it makes a difference, and it's exciting to the kids, of course, and it's a part of the daily life in the Agora, because you might need to shop for some of these. They break a lot. It's pottery. It breaks a lot. So Dad is here. His son is about to take a few coins because he's in the Agora, the marketplace area. It's more than a market. It is not just a place to buy foods and your daily needs. And to compare that to your life, you kind of think like, where do you go to get your day going? Not just for food and the basics, but also to see people. To see people, to exchange ideas, to talk to people, to learn things. It is very much a part of the Agora. The Agora is so important. The government official, the agoronymos, is in charge of making sure not only the market works well, weights and measures, coins that can be trusted, but everything that goes on there. Now, the little boy has some coins. Which coins does he have? Maybe the very, very smallest ones. We're not going to give him one of those, the big drachma with the owl on it. Athens was starting to mint these right around 500 BC. The drachma is maybe 5 grams of silver. It kind of changes over time, similar to the denarius. And I often call it like a $10 bill. I might call it a $5 bill or a $20 bill. It's hard to know exactly what it would pay for, what it would buy, but a drachma should be worth more than just one meal. And it should be worth maybe more than a day's worth of meals. And so those bigger drachma coins, and Athena's owl represents the success and strength of Athens. So these coins are now becoming popular, but we're not going to give that much money to the little boy. He's just got some of the bronze coins. The bronze coins that I also saw in the museum. They had piles of them because they're not going to be worth more than, what you might buy for a snack. $1's worth or $2 worth, something like that. These are some of the bronze coins found in various piles in these village homes right at the base of that Acropolis, in that foundation area of the Acropolis Museum. And these bronze coins, yeah, you could give them to a kid, and they might be what you would use to buy yourself a snack, to buy yourself something in the market. And look at all the fruits and vegetables, the fresh bread. Food is very important. And the sunshine that's 300 days a year in Athens, it means that you can grow a lot of fruits, vegetables, and have them year round. And have, like in June, when I usually show up to Athens in June, apricot season. You saw figs earlier. You see all kinds of things, but fruits come in season at different times. And tree ripened apricots. Ooh, yes. So good. And they would just be a few of these bronze coins. And there's even a spot really close, like that's an authentic picture, actually, because in Athens, you can still go to that same market area called the Plaka. And there's even like a flea market that tries to sell you some of these fake ancient coins. I always say, don't buy coins, even if they say they're authentic, they're probably not. What else is happening at the Agora? To compare it to your life, maybe you go someplace in the morning for breakfast. Maybe you go to hang out with friends. Where do you go to get information? Where do you go to get ideas? Where do you go to share your ideas? The Agora. The word Agora means open area. So it's not just a market. It's also open for people to come and hang out. And this was a part of the culture. That speaker is standing on the Bema. The 3 steps for the Bema are an honored number of steps, and he is an honored speaker. In different situations, he might even wear laurel on his head. I think that's going to be for later, where he might speak on a Bema that's in the assembly, the democracy. But this is not the assembly, it's just the public. Where do you go? What do you do to get ideas, to get information, to listen to other people's opinions, to see things? They don't have screen time in Athens. And so here's our family as they go through the Agora. They're at the Bema. And there's an actual picture that I took of the Bema and where it sits in the Agora. And it's really quite exciting. There's been some famous people that go to the Agora and present. So that will come up again in a later lesson. Can this guy talk all day? I mean, he probably could, but the Greeks are famous for inventing the water clock. And the one above it is authentic. The one below it is kind of the recreation. So as the water drips out of the water clock, that was used to limit the amount of time this guy can talk. Now let's think about that for a second. Why would we limit how long he talks? Is that like democracy? Is that like checks and balances? Like we want to have time to hear everybody. And this water clock was an invention of the Greeks to help ensure that to be true. Let's remember what democracy really is. In this free society that they're free to come to the Agora, they've got written laws protecting, but a water clock is like a check and a balance. To allow for wider participation, more people get to talk. And obviously there's other things there too, but this is the good life so far in this morning. And right now, if you would stop and make a comment to make your comparison to life, like right now, what is the Agora in your world? Many people say, oh, a place like Amazon or Walmart or Costco could be the Agora, because it really is more than a market. You can do so many things there. And Jeff Bezos was the billionaire, kind of got Amazon going, and then with his money also bought a newspaper. What's the connection between a market, an online marketplace, and are there social, do we listen to people there with reviews? And then he bought the Washington Post. Do all those things go together? And in ancient Athens, yes, the Agora was everything when it came to interacting and learning about your society in Athens, which everyone says is the best anyway. So they've got something going. It's a good start to the day. What else do we do after? Well, let's get on with our day. Leave the Agora. What's next? Let's follow the boys. The father's the head of the household, and he is going to direct everyone with their priorities of the day. And if you're 7 years old or older, your training heads to the Gymnasion or gymnasium. But the Greek gymnasion is a combination of learning things and athletic training. These boys probably spend almost every day reciting some poetry. That's going to include Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey. You heard that Solon was a poet, and poetry is popular. It's a way to express, just like painting exciting images on the clay pots. This is a way for people to learn what's going on in the world. So these boys are learning, and they're also going to have some physical training here at the Gymnasion. This entire approach that Dad is conducting is called Paideia. It's the complete, well-rounded education that's fully integrated into life. So it's the way you bring up your child, but there's an ideal. There's a virtue that's attached to it, and that is the Paideia to design and build and grow, develop and flourish the happy citizen that can do it all. That's what's happening here at the gymnasium. What's happening with the girls? Athens is more sectioned off than a lot of places when it comes to boys and girls doing totally different things. But the Paideia, the upbringing of the girls, there are a lot of household activities that are economically important. So weaving fabric is definitely one. And that was very common inside the home. This family appears to be pretty wealthy. We don't know exactly, but when you see purple fabric and weaving, they might be making this to sell. The household economy is a big deal in ancient Athens. And so for the moms to be involved in this, the girls are going to learn it as part of their training. We saw some of these toys. So in those artifacts in that museum, they had collections of toys, and there were definite girl doll toys. Mom is maybe keeping some records for the house. She's tallying things, she's tracking things while her daughter is playing. But it is also possible that these toys were made in the house as part of the household economy. I see in the background some herbs that are drying. And food is so important, and herbs grow. I think I had mentioned oregano is something that you want to bring back from Greece. It grows on those mountain hillsides, and those leaves look bigger. They look like laurel, which we call bay leaves, which is probably in your kitchen cabinets. This lifestyle is self-sufficient. The domestic was done. The archaeologists in this collection, we see the hairpins, we know there was ribbons, a lot of styles that made women like a beautiful work of art when they headed out. And there's reasons later to head out in festivals that are happening in this day in the life of Athens, because it's the springtime. And right now the family is just going to relax. I think the son is still off at the Gymnasion with his training. But it's just a scene of a family. And yeah, Dad is the boss. So you compare that to today's world and you say, that's not the way we see the balance of power within a family, the Oikos that the father really runs. And the mother's legal status is kind of like only with the permission of Dad, which kind of compares to, like 16-year-old drivers. They really get their driver's license through the permission of their parents. And so it's different in that sense, but something that we can learn a lot from the Oikos of ancient Athens. People get so worked up over Sparta being the best, the toughest. You know that they train their kids at age 7 in a pretty hardcore military training. So when we go back over to see how is this boy doing in his paideia of the day, reciting poetry and Homer, like how does that really help toughness? Is Athens really going to be tough enough if they get invaded, if they have to fight off an enemy, a big enemy like Persia or something like that? Is that training really doing us any good? Or is Sparta going to have to be the muscle? So let's head over to the Gymnasion where, fortunately we do see there is some military training going on. Dad would be training his son. So let's compare that to today and let's compare that to Sparta. In today's world, what does dad typically do with a son? Playing catch, it's a family responsibility to bring the boy up with a mindset of civic duty and willingness to serve in the military. It's kind of a seasonal thing. When you're not working on the crops or you're not doing some of your other economic activities, you need to serve in the military. And this boy is being trained to do that. Some families are more military than others. But I guess the point is this is not anywhere close to what Sparta does when it comes to military training. It is a very balanced approach. And so maybe that's how we compare it to today. Kids do go into the military out of high school, but their high school and middle school upbringing typically does not have military training. There are some opportunities to do that, but it's the exception and not the rule, as they say. The Gymnasion is also going to have a lot of physical, healthy activity. And this is where we get physical education. For kids to have gym class, gymnasium class, to have physical education as part of a classical education is incredibly important. Classical schools ensure a lot of physical education because of the connection that the physical body has to helping you learn. A better, healthy, strong body, it makes a difference. And this comes from ancient Athens. It comes from ancient Sparta. It comes from Greece in general, because they know that that helps in the path to happiness. Eudaimonia, the human flourishing. Now, there was a famous gymnasium right here. So I visited this Lyceum. This is a place that would have been outside the city walls. It would have been an open area that could have hosted the assembly sometimes, the Ecclesia, for people to debate and vote. But it also was a place where famous philosophers came to teach. It was also a famous gymnasium where the kids would go and train. And you had to walk to get there. It's outside the city walls. So while you're walking, Dad is helping his son pick up the pieces of broken pottery because, you're walking around, pottery breaks all the time. And of course, this excites archaeologists. They love broken pottery. Archaeology is based on finding broken pottery and then trying to date it. But Dad is saying, hey, don't worry, son, because we're going to use these broken pieces of pottery. They use them as pieces of paper. You can etch into it, you can write on it. And Dad is heading to participate in the assembly today. So he's going to be able to use that and maybe write somebody's name. What do you do when you write somebody's name on here and you say, get out for 10 years? We want you to just get out of Athens for 10 years. Had you heard of this in a previous lesson? These are ostracons, where it looks like Aristides. I see his name written there on this piece of pottery. Why is his name written? Because he was getting nominated in the assembly to get kicked out of Athens for maybe it was 1 year and maybe it was up to 10 years. Now, why do they do that? It's a check and a balance. Do we have any comparison to that today? Don't tell me that, your friends give you the silent treatment. Very unpleasant, right? To, ostracize someone, to exclude them. But Athens viewed it as a check and a balance, is almost like a healthy part to ensure that people are not going to go overboard with their ideas. And that included if laws get passed that you wrote, you write a law. You put a lot of thought into this law. You think this is really going to improve Athens. And you feel the sense of pride. You're selling it to your people in the assembly. Here we are in the assembly now, and we are debating and voting, and they had a testing period for your idea. And they would say, hey, remember Demetrios with his terrible idea a year later? Look at the mess it created. Well, ostracism. You might end up with your name on pieces of clay, pottery, on an ostracon, and you get ostracized. Maybe they have other debate happening here, because about once a week, you would see those banners go up in the air. And that was a responsibility of the men to go and participate. So if you were in the Agora and you see those banners go up, you do not want to get marked with red chalk. They had 300 slaves that had these long ropes, and it wasn't really chalk, it was like ink, kind of like a staining. It would stain your clothes. So think about those open areas, and these slaves are running around with ropes. There's 300 of them because the flags have gone up, and that's your signal to go and be a part of the assembly. And there would be thousands. There would be 6,000 minimum to make a quorum. And if anyone showed up there and they had red stripes on their clothing, they would have to pay a fine. Now think about that. They still show up and they're willing to pay a fine. Why? Do we have any comparison to that today? Can we relate to our civic duty to the point that we would even pay a fine? We would need to make it a priority to participate in the assembly, because democracy has been invented and self-government means we ourselves must contribute. We ourselves must put something into this government, because then we will have skin in the game. You've heard that phrase before. So some of the other duties might get rotated by this machine. They had this automatic machine, and they had these little discs that had your name inscriptions on them. And so from this machine, if your disc got pulled, you might have other duties. You could serve in the Bully, the Council of 500. You might serve on the committees. You might help run city affairs. But this is your participation. Join the debate. It is your duty. It's how to be the very best Athenian citizen and make the very best society that you can, which is what you were raised to do. That is paideia. And now you're raising your son and your daughter. You're raising your dog because he's part of the Oikos. You know, this is our life now. And you're conducting your affairs. You're conducting your household in a way that brings the very best ideal citizen. And that is the mentality of Athens. So does that make Athens the best? And once again, I would ask you to share a comment that would make a comparison to today. And if you haven't already clicked the like button, now's the time to do it, that you could like what is happening to ancient Athens. Not that you think Athens is the best, but maybe it is. Dancing silly dances. Is there any comparison to that today? Dancing silly dances. The Greek theater was a big deal in Athens' life. And so later in the day, we know that the theater is going to open up. Now, really popular around this time were Greek tragedies. So, you know, a tragedy is when the protagonist, the one producing the action, the main character is not going to overcome a struggle. He's going to lose. It's a tragedy. That's no fun. Let's do something fun like silly dances. Where do you go to do silly dances? And does it make you happy? This is supposed to be about a happy life. Well, in the theater, if you had a festival for Dionysia, and you dress up like a half goat and you do silly dances and you make fun of people, satire, Uh, this is the beginning of a form of comedy, satire, because typically you dress up like a goat, you do funny dances, and you kind of mock some of the people. Like you might mock Cleisthenes. He invented democracy. Why would you ever mock him? It's a free society, and people are maybe frustrated with some of the things that democracy brings about. They might be mocking the personal life of some of these people. Do we have a comparison to that? Like, do we get into the business of famous people and try to expose things and mock them? Well, as a form of comedy, these kids are doing silly dances. The satires, they're dressing up like half goats. And this could be a part of a city of Dionysia. Now, what's that word city doing there? I thought we were in the city of Athens. No, we are in the polis of Athens. Polis is kind of the beginning of the word that we now throw around like the word city. But the city of Dionysia is the festival that they had in the springtime. It's a fertility festival, as some of the first crops and things. Now it is kind of, it's more for the adults with the wine and stuff, but Dionysia has a cult following, people that celebrate Dionysia. They are the city. So the word city, the word polis, is supposed to mean people. It's not supposed to mean buildings and skyscrapers. Like that's kind of what I think of when I hear of city. I think of the skyline. I think the highways going through. As a kid, I loved doing road trips through the cities. I didn't like them out in the middle of nowhere where there's nothing to look at, but I loved the city skyline, how tall the skyscrapers were. That is not what the word city was supposed to originally mean. It's about the people, the word citizen. And the citizens that take part in Dionysia are part of the cult, the culture of Dionysia. And that city is going to include all the people and all the practices that really bring kids together, people, families together. Look at these kids. They're being supported by the Choregos. The Choregos was the sponsor, the person that paid for some of the festival. And so they're just practicing a song for the festival. Let's say Dionysia is not your thing. You'd rather celebrate in the cult of Apollo and Artemis. And they have a festival too. It is the earlier festival in the springtime. So maybe we're the Thargelia. Thargelia was later in May. The city of Dionysia was earlier. You had some play competitions, tragedy competitions, and the satires. This is different. It's the first fruits, some of the best apricots. It's probably close to apricot season. Like I said, those are the best tree ripened apricots. We can't get those very easily here. But it also has a purification where they would actually kind of identify some criminals as scapegoats and then go throw them in the sea to kind of purify. So they have a lot of religious practices, but they always involve some sort of parade and something outdoors, something fun, something to involve people and to get dressed up for. So the women that were getting their hair all ready and to wear the very best clothes out was to get ready for some of these festivals. Now, later on at home, you are hosting a symposium. So what is a symposium? It is a form of entertainment. Now, technically, it's really just for the men to have wine and to discuss philosophy, to discuss the good life, to discuss if Athens is the best. Do you think Athens is the best? Do they have a richer, more robust life than Sparta? This picture is showing it's kind of a family event. So maybe the style of a symposium. There's actually some very famous, big, epic symposium where some of the very top minds of ancient Greece, the men, this is where it would be a male-only event. And so I would ask you, like, where do we have some events that bring the best minds together in kind of a relaxed, open, fun environment where they could share ideas? Similar to this, it looks like a neighborhood party, really, but they would have enjoyed their company and they would have discussed some of these big ideas just like you would at the symposium. They would discuss the democracy, the debates of the day, whether or not a law was any good. They would discuss the role of duty and virtue. And if they're raising their child in a good paideia, in a good way, is their upbringing going to produce the very best citizen? Because that was the goal. And the responsibility of this is placed on the father. In the Oikos of ancient Athens, it was a heavy responsibility, a sense of duty that father would have to keep his nuclear family together, to run it well, and to instill a sense of virtue, duty, and honor in the free society that they now have. They have democracy in ancient Athens. They have a flourishing amount of enjoyable life, as you can see here. Well, now I sound biased. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to influence you if Athens is the best or not. But how much is Athens' lifestyle the way ours is? Did you find enough similarities? And please put your ideas, your comments in the chat, because this is such as Greek life becomes across all of the Hellenistic city-states. They very much want a lifestyle like what Athens has. Perfect. But Athens does serve as a model for others. And city-states, Greek Hellenistic city-states, want to copy Athens. They have a sense of civic engagement, a sense of identity as Athenians, as Greeks. And it's really part of that human journey, the classical journey for truth and good and beauty. And they see that on the path that they place their kids on, the Eudaimonia path, the virtuous path. So remember this daily life in Athens and compare it. And always consider, is yours going to be like that? Is it because of freedom, and is it because of democracy? Did the revolutionary democratic reforms of Cleisthenes and the leaders that came before him, did that end up empowering Athenians to live life to the fullest? And if so, can you learn a lesson that makes you someone that can help others live life to the fullest? What will you carry forward to your age of human flourishing, just like the Athenians? So thank you for taking the time to learn something that matters in all of history, and that includes your history, some classical truth for your journey. Because kingdoms rise and fall, power fades, but virtue endures.